Some battles don't start with gunfire or sirens. Some begin on quiet streets, lined with trimmed hedges and American flags, where control hides behind courtesy and power wears a smile. I wasn't looking for a fight. I just wanted one quiet night after a long shift. But when you live in a place where rules matter more than reason, peace is just an illusion. This isn't a story about crime. It's a story about pride, about what happens when silence turns into submission. And one woman's obsession with control meets a community that finally remembers how to speak up. There's something sacred about silence after a long shift. It was just after 9 p.m. when I finally pulled onto Mulberry Lane, the kind of pristine suburban street where lawns are too green, hedges are trimmed like military haircuts, and porch lights flicker on like clockwork. I'd been undercover for 3 weeks, running surveillance on a drug ring out in the industrial district. I hadn't slept a full night in 8 days. All I wanted was to park my unmarked cruiser, slip inside, microwave the leftover lasagna my ex-wife used to make better, and let the world spin without me for a while. But life has a wicked sense of timing. I hadn't been inside for more than 15 minutes when I heard the mechanical clank and hydraulic whine of a tow truck out front. My stomach sank. I opened the front door and stepped onto the porch, barefoot, and still wearing the gray hoodie that had become my off-duty uniform. And there it was. My car, my department-issued unmarked police cruiser, was halfway up the ramp of a tow truck. The driver, a scrawny kid no older than 22, looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Standing beside him, clipboard in hand, and arms crossed like she was commanding an army, was Linda Barrett. She wore power like perfume, strong, sharp, and impossible to ignore. Short blonde bob, matching navy blue tracksuit with the HOA president embroidered on the chest. Lips pursed in permanent disapproval. When she saw me, she didn't flinch. She smiled. That was the first red flag. "Good evening," she said, voice coated in that fake sweetness some people weaponize in customer service disputes. "Do you know whose car this is?" I blinked, half processing the absurdity. "Mine." Her smile didn't waver. "Well, sir, you can't park there. It's been more than 15 minutes, and our HOA bylaws strictly prohibit unattended vehicles overnight. This one doesn't have a resident parking tag." I glanced at the curb. No signage, no red paint, not even a bump on the sidewalk. "Ma'am," I started, keeping my voice even, "this is a police vehicle." Now I didn't expect applause, maybe an apology. At worst, a slightly embarrassed backpedal. Instead, she chuckled. "Police or not, our rules apply to everyone equally." And just like that, we were off to the races, emotional undertones and hooks. Jack Reynolds is not just a cop. He's a man recovering from stress, a broken marriage, and the weight of his job. His desire for peace sets the emotional baseline. Linda Barrett isn't just an annoying HOA president. She's a symbol of obsessive control, someone who sees rules not as guidelines, but as weapons. The situation is absurd on the surface, but beneath it is a collision of authority versus perceived power, order versus control, law versus social hierarchy. "Ma'am," I repeated, a little firmer this time, "you're trying to tow a police vehicle that's legally parked in front of my house." Linda took a slow, theatrical breath, like I'd just accused her of stealing from a church collection plate. "Sir, I'm not trying to do anything," she said with a condescending smile. "The vehicle has been stationary for 30 minutes, unmarked, and without resident identification. That violates Article 7, Section B of the HOA Charter." She said it like a judge delivering a sentence in federal court. I walked down the porch steps slowly, aware of the tow truck driver watching me like he wasn't sure if he should salute or run. "You realize," I said, "this is a city-owned law enforcement vehicle?" Linda tilted her head. "I see no lights, no markings. And you're in a hoodie, not a uniform. For all I know, that car could belong to anyone." It was a power play. She wanted control, not clarity. She wanted submission, not truth. I reached into my hoodie pocket and pulled out my wallet, flipped it open. My badge caught the porch light just enough for the number and seal to gleam. I held it for a beat longer than necessary. The tow truck driver exhaled loudly, relieved. But Linda didn't flinch. She doubled down. "Well," she said, "badge or not, the rules still apply. HOA policy doesn't exempt law enforcement. If I make an exception for you, I have to make an exception for everyone." And then, as if to solidify her delusion, she pulled a thin, laminated booklet from her tote bag, her own fine ledger. The thing looked like it had been printed at a Staples with too much ink and too little authority. Before I could say another word, she began scribbling furiously. Name: unknown male resident. Violation: unauthorized vehicle presence. Fine: $250, payable within 7 days to the HOA treasurer. Infraction level: moderate to severe. She tore the page, handed it to me like she was delivering Holy Scripture, and said with triumph, "You've been cited." It was honestly unbelievable. I looked at the ticket, then back at her. "This isn't real." She raised an eyebrow. "It's real enough to be enforced." The tow truck driver finally stepped in, holding up both hands. "Ma'am, with all due respect, if this guy's a cop and that's a department vehicle, we might be stepping into something bigger than an HOA rule." Linda turned on him like a hawk, spotting prey. "You're not paid to think, you're paid to tow," she snapped. I couldn't help it. I let out a sharp laugh. That did it. Her face flushed deep red, and for the first time since this circus began, I saw it, the cracks in her composure. Not fear, not guilt. No, it was worse. Ego bruised, pride punctured, and now revenge inevitable. I lowered my voice and looked straight into her eyes. "Linda, this ticket, this tow order, none of it's enforceable. You're impersonating a civil authority and potentially misusing emergency services. You might want to think very, very carefully about your next move." She stared back, lips trembling for just a second, then tightened them like a clamp, and she said the 5 words I'll never forget. "We'll see about that, officer." Then she turned, hips stiff, steps sharp, and stormed back to her house like a retreating general plotting a counterattack. This segment marks the official beginning of the power struggle. We establish Linda's deep-seated obsession with rules and control, not just out of order, but out of ego. Jack, the narrator, remains composed, but the audience sees what's at stake. Not just his pride, but the integrity of the law itself. The ticket scene is intentionally over the top, in the most believable way, pushing the story towards satire, while grounding it in recognizable real-life absurdities. It started the next morning. I was sipping burnt coffee and scrolling half-heartedly through yesterday's case reports when my phone buzzed. Dispatch. Odd, considering I was technically off duty. "Lieutenant, we just got a report of a suspicious vehicle parked outside 204 Mulberry Lane. Caller says it's been there overnight and might be involved in drug activity." I blinked. 204? That's my house. Silence on the line, then a sigh. "Thought so. Name on the report is Linda Barrett." I didn't laugh. I didn't curse. I just stared out the window at the street I thought was home. By noon, there were 2 more calls. By nightfall, there were 5. Unknown man loitering. Unfamiliar vehicle driving slowly. Smell of chemicals in the air. All from the same number, all directed at me. At first, I chalked it up to ego. A bruised HOA president trying to win back a little face. But by day 3, it was no longer just about me. Around 6:30 p.m., I walked outside to find my next-door neighbor, Marla, standing beside her mailbox, holding a bright orange ticket in her hand. She looked confused. "Jack, did you Get one of these. I took it from her. The font was bold, the HOA logo clumsily scanned. The violation: overgrown shrubs blocking visibility of street signs. Fine, $100, payable by money order. I looked at her hedges. Trimmed, neat, not an inch out of place. Where did this come from? I asked. Left in my mailbox, she said. No envelope, no return address. I walked 3 houses down. 2 more orange tickets. One was for watering outside the designated hours. The other for having a faded welcome mat. By sunset, I'd counted 11 households that had received citations from the homeowner vigilante queen herself. The kicker? The bottom of each ticket listed a payment method: Venmo, recipient, @HOA LB president. That night, I sat in my kitchen, ticket in one hand, badge in the other. I should have filed a report, should have called the city, should have stormed back over and put an end to it. But I didn't. Because the truth is, I wasn't sure what scared me more, her audacity, or how much of it the neighborhood was letting slide. Linda wasn't just misusing authority. She was creating a world where everyone was afraid to speak up. And I recognized that world. It was the same fear I saw in witnesses, too scared to testify. The same silence that let abusers keep hurting. The same damn silence that cost me a partner 5 years ago in a case where nobody wanted to get involved. I clenched the ticket, crumpled it in my fist, and stared at the window across the street. Linda's blinds were shut, but I knew she was watching. Emotional and narrative depth. Linda's retaliation escalates from personal to social. She begins reshaping the entire neighborhood through fabricated authority. We see the community's discomfort, fear, and passive submission, setting up a later moral and emotional payoff. This segment reveals Jack's internal conflict. His past trauma with systemic silence, the pain of helplessness, and his growing sense of duty, not just as a cop, but as a neighbor and human being. A layer of emotional stakes is added. It's no longer about winning an argument. It's about standing up for people too scared to do it themselves. By the end of the week, the neighborhood looked tired. Trash bins were dragged in with robotic precision, lawns trimmed to HOA regulation height, cars parked perfectly within the lines, like some invisible boot camp drill master was lurking. Linda Barrett had succeeded in doing what even the city couldn't. She turned Mulberry Lane into a gated community without a gate. But even dictators run out of rope. On a breezy Thursday morning, I noticed something strange. 3 houses had identical violation tickets on their doors, each citing excessive decorative flair. The offense? Halloween pumpkins. One family had 2 plastic skeletons dancing on their porch. Another had fairy lights around their mailbox. I saw the youngest son of the Morales family, maybe 9 or 10, taking down the decorations with tears in his eyes. She said my pumpkins make the street look tacky, he mumbled. I froze. Something snapped in me. And it wasn't about the pumpkins. It was the fact that no one was stopping her. I knelt beside him. What's your name, bud? Eli. You like Halloween? He nodded, wiping his nose. Keep your pumpkins up, Eli, I said, standing up. We'll take care of this. That afternoon, I walked to the HOA community board, a wooden panel near the park entrance. Someone had duct-taped a crumpled citation onto it and written in thick red marker, "Who watches the HOA?" Another note followed. Linda isn't enforcing rules. She's inventing them. Then a third. Enough is enough. And beneath it, tucked in the crack of the board, was a folded piece of notebook paper with my name scribbled in blue ink. Jack, we're with you. Let us know what to do. I stared at it for a long while, the wind rustling leaves at my feet. My first instinct was tactical. Organize, collect statements, build a case. But something in me knew this wasn't about law. It was about trust. It was about showing people it was safe to speak up again. So I changed the plan. I spent the next 2 days quietly collecting stories. People were scared at first, speaking in whispers like, Linda could hear through the walls. But when I shared what she had done to me, the towing, the fake fine, the police reports, something shifted. People began to open up. Marla had been threatened with a lien on her house if she didn't repaint her mailbox. The Nguyen family was fined $150 for cultural decor because they'd hung red paper lanterns during Lunar New Year. A retired veteran was accused of verbal hostility for confronting Linda after she tore down his American flag for being too large. I wasn't just collecting stories, I was collecting fuel. That Saturday, something happened I didn't expect. Linda showed up at my door. Hair perfectly combed, jacket buttoned to the throat, smile brittle like spun glass. "May I come in?" she asked. I hesitated, then stepped aside. She didn't sit. "I know what you're doing," she said calmly. "You're turning people against me." I raised an eyebrow. "I didn't have to turn anyone. They were already facing the consequences of your leadership." Her lips thinned. "I've given this neighborhood order. Before me, it was chaos. Toys on lawns, loud music, stray cats, and now you've made it personal." I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "It became personal the moment you called the police on a police officer and bullied a 9-year-old over plastic pumpkins." She stared at me like I'd slapped her. "You think you're the hero in this story," she snapped. "You think I'm the villain? I've been the one keeping this street livable for years." Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from something worse. Entitlement unacknowledged, control unraveling, power slipping. I softened, just a little. "Linda, this doesn't have to end badly. Step back. Apologize. Let the community breathe." She shook her head slowly. "You're naive if you think they'll thank you. People don't want freedom, Jack. They want rules. Until they're the ones who break them." Then she left. And I knew she wasn't going to stop. Emotional and narrative impact. The community begins to rise, but not through rebellion, through quiet solidarity, which feels more powerful than confrontation. Linda's internal vulnerability is revealed. Her actions stem from fear of chaos, not pure malice. This adds dimensionality to her character. Jack transitions from being defensive to proactive. He's no longer just reacting to Linda's abuse of power. He's becoming a leader in the community in a deeply human way. The moral complexity increases. What do we owe to order? When does structure become tyranny? When does silence become complicity? Monday came with gray skies and an uneasiness that crept into everything, from the wind brushing through hedges to the way people pulled their trash bins in without eye contact. But that was the day we stopped being quiet. By noon, I had all the pieces I needed. Over 24 written statements from residents, screenshots of Venmo transactions, photos of fake citations, and the kicker, a video grainy, taken from a second-story window, time-stamped 2:13 a.m. of Linda slipping up the driveway of a single mom's home and taping a violation to her front door. The violation? Excessive use of holiday lighting, $200 fine. That was the final straw. We held the meeting at the community clubhouse, a beige little building that usually hosted yoga classes and overpriced bake sales. That night, it was full, standing room only. Linda was there, seated at the front table, shoulders drawn high, lips tight. She wore a navy blue blazer and an air of invincibility. But she didn't realize. Her kingdom had already fallen. I didn't start the meeting. Marla did. She walked up to the podium, holding a stack of envelopes. She looked tired but unshakable. "Good evening," she said. "These are the notices many of us received. Notices we were told were official, that we owed money, that we broke laws. Tonight, we find out whether we were led or lied to." People murmured, someone clapped. Linda leaned into the microphone. Those citations were perfectly valid under provisional HOA authority granted to the president during... I stood up, holding up a thick manila folder. That's not true, I said. The HOA bylaws clearly state that all financial penalties must be approved by a quorum. None of these fines were ever put to vote. I placed the folder on the table. This is a full report of false citations, unauthorized collection of money, and misuse of HOA resources, collected under false pretenses. Linda's face paled, but still she fought. These rules existed to protect the community. If you want chaos, go live downtown. I've kept this neighborhood clean, orderly, safe. And then someone else stood up. An elderly man, cane in hand, voice steady. Linda, you threatened to foreclose my home if I didn't repaint my shutters. Then another. You fined my daughter for chalk drawings on the sidewalk. Another. You told my husband his American flag was too aggressive. One by one, they rose, and Linda shrank. But it wasn't over. She stood, trembling now, voice cracking but sharp. You're all turning against me because of him, because of Jack Reynolds. He's manipulating you. He wants chaos. He wants lawlessness. All eyes turned to me, and I walked to the front, not in anger, not to accuse, but to tell the truth. I moved here because I thought this neighborhood was different, quiet, safe, normal. But what I found was fear disguised as order. I looked at the crowd. Linda didn't give us structure. She gave us silence. She punished difference. And she used fake authority to control the very people she said she was protecting. I took a breath. Let the room settle. This isn't about HOA rules. This is about who we are as a community. Then I placed my badge on the table next to her violation book. This is real authority, and I'm telling you, what happened here? It wasn't just unethical, it was criminal. Silence. Then the HOA vice president cleared his throat, stood up, and said the words we were all waiting for. Effective immediately, Linda Barrett is removed from her position as president of the HOA, pending legal investigation. She didn't scream. She didn't argue. She just sat down slowly, silently, and stared ahead like a shipwrecked captain watching her ship go under. Outside, the rain had started, and for the first time in weeks, it felt cleansing. Emotional and narrative impact. The community finds its voice, not in violence, but in unity. Jack no longer stands alone. This is not a hero's journey. It's a collective awakening. Linda's final stand isn't loud. It's desperate, hollow, revealing the fragility of false power when stripped of fear. The themes of justice, fear, community courage, and truth versus power are now fully matured, ready to give way to the resolution in Act 3. The days after the meeting were quiet, but it wasn't the same silence as before. It wasn't laced with fear or tiptoeing or stiff greetings behind closed blinds. It was restful, like the neighborhood had collectively let out a breath it didn't know it had been holding. Linda Barrett was gone by Friday. A moving truck came at dawn, and she didn't speak to anyone. Not that anyone tried. No one watched from their porches. No one recorded. It wasn't a public shaming. It was a letting go. Some wounds don't need salt. They just need closure. Later that week, the HOA held a new election. This time, the ballots were public, the candidates transparent, the process open. Marla Gentle, Steady Marla, was voted in unanimously as the new president. Her first official act? Voiding every fine issued in the last 6 months. Her second? Starting a Community Voices Committee to ensure no one in the neighborhood would be silenced again. At the first committee meeting, Eli the Pumpkin Kid showed up with a drawing of a superhero holding a rake and a flashlight. His mom told me he called the character Captain Mulberry. I laughed, but something about it stuck with me. On the job, my precinct had caught wind of the HOA mess. Some joked, some didn't. My captain pulled me aside. Jack, you sure you don't want to press charges? We've got enough to hit her with misuse of emergency services, impersonation, maybe even mail fraud. I thought about it, long and hard. Linda had technically broken laws. She'd abused power, fabricated authority, and manipulated fear. But at the end of the day, what she really destroyed was trust. And that had already been rebuilt. So I told the captain, let it go. Let the neighborhood be the verdict. Let the silence she left behind speak louder than any judge ever could. The last time I saw her was from a distance, maybe a week later, in town. She was at a post office, clutching a stack of manila envelopes. Her hair was unkempt, her eyes tired. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did, and pretended not to. But there was no fire in her, no pride, just vacancy. And oddly, I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt pity. Not for what she'd lost, but for what she'd never really had, a sense of community, a sense of self outside of control. Back on Mulberry Lane, things were simple again. Kids rode bikes. Music drifted out of open windows. One neighbor threw a block party. Someone brought apple pie. Someone else brought chili. I brought soda. And no one asked for HOA approval. And one evening, as I sat on my porch watching the sun fall between rooftops, a little voice called out from the sidewalk, "Hey, Jack!" It was Eli, holding a new drawing. This time, the superhero had a badge on his chest and a coffee mug in one hand. The caption underneath read, "Not all heroes wear capes. Some wear hoodies." I smiled. Maybe I didn't save the world, but I helped one small corner of it remember what it meant to live without fear. And for me, that was enough.